I don't have anything to say about this. I mean, YouTube's community violation system is broken.
Hello, interwebs. I hope you're all doing well. Unfortunately, this is going to be a video where I'm going to vent my frustrations at a situation that I find to be deeply troubling, honestly disturbing, anger-inducing, frustrating, and one that I think really needs discussion and correction, especially on YouTube's part, because the fact that this situation was allowed to happen really upsets me and disturbs me, and I think points out some hypocrisy.
All right, I'm bored now. You guys get the deal. YouTube sucks. Jesse is correct. Yeah, it got nuked for nudity when there's no nudity in the video. Apparently, I emailed you this back. As a reminder, it all comes down to basic language, which I think you're trying to get at in a "what is a woman" debate. What is this? On the subject of adult. Oh, John S. I probably wouldn't have read this. The definition of woman is strictly used by adult human female. Adult human female contains self-reference. This is what I've always said. If you look through definitions, you'll find tons of self-reference. A lot of cultural and social definitions just refer to themselves. Like, for instance, what does it mean for somebody to be cool? There's no way of answering without using a synonym for cool. Like, what does it mean to be cool? Well, I mean, it's like being rad. Oh, I mean, it's like affecting the mannerisms and behaviors associated with being cool. Anybody who's like, oh, actually, all definitions are perfectly tautologically consistent and have no self-reference. No, what? Yes, they are. They're just language. Language is complicated. Jesus. Yeah, what is a chair? Tell me what a chair is. You replied very kindly to the email. No, John S., I probably did read it. I think I remember this. Okay, I've talked about this before, but like, if you want to move somebody over on the whole trans woman thing, the first thing that you have to do is you have to break down any kind of like linguistic prescriptivism they have. Because no matter what arguments you make, even if you go the transmed route and you're just like, well, some people have a brain disease, we're the pink brain and blue body, you know? Even if you go that route, they could just go like, oh, that's your mental illness. Actually, your gender is still your body sex, and that's not changing. Like that, and they would be right to say that in the framework that they have. You have to break down the linguistic prescriptivism. You have to get them to arrive at the point where it's like, we should use the definition that's most useful, right? You know what I mean? Because I think you can make a really good argument, like a really good argument, that whatever definition we have for a woman is not that useful. Or sorry, that we have for a man is not that useful if it includes like her, right? Like whatever we mean when we say man, like all the associations, all the connotations, all the ideas we have, if this fits in that category rather than the category of woman, that's a really weird, not useful definition, you know? Even Ben Shapiro has conceded that there's more utility in referring to Blair White as a woman. So we have to make the argument that utility is what matters. That's what you have to focus on. Yeah, like self-reference by naming Ben Hannibal, you know? Like, yeah, what is a Yankees player? A Yankees player is a player that belongs to the team Yankees. What is the team Yankees? The team Yankees is a team called Yankees, you know? Okay, so, all right. Segment this part, I'm trans, I want this. But I haven't even said the real part yet. The real part to the argument, if you want to talk about the fluidity of language and how language should be defined by use case rather than by some weird, like, prescriptive bullshit, okay? I've done this before, I'll do it again. Guys! All right, we're going to imagine two scenarios here, okay? Well, first, let's talk about a river, okay? Here's a river. What a beautiful river. Look at that. Hey! Not bad, huh? Looks pretty good. Okay? So, imagine if somebody asked me what's in the river, and I said water, would I be telling the truth? I'm not going to wait for chat's answers. I'm just going to continue. Most people would say yes. In fact, everyone would. Yeah, there's water in the river. That's a river water, right? Okay? Now, in reality, the water in this river is not all water, right? It contains sediment. It contains fish, rocks, debris, leaves, a bunch of stuff, microorganisms, you know. The water contains a ton of stuff that isn't water, you know. Now, if you handed a water bottle to somebody and they were like, oh, is it? I'm like, oh, here, have some water. You know, like, oh, here, you look thirsty, have some water. And it's a closed water bottle. And I hand it to them, okay? Now, Imagine they open it up and drink from it, and it's a regular water bottle. Like it's a normal, like Aquafina, whatever, like water bottle, okay? That's one world. And then there's another world where I've actually filled the water up with the contents of this river. Now, you would be able to taste river water, unless it's a natural spring. You don't want to be drinking most river water. You know, it can depend on where it is, but, let's just say it's not the cleanest river water, all right? Now, if you handed somebody a water bottle and they drank it and it turned out to be river water, meaning they drank down animal feces, dirt, sand, sediment, little bits of microorganisms, it tasted really bad, they would probably reasonably accuse you of having been dishonest, right? I mean, you lied to them, didn't you? I mean, you said that you were handing them a water bottle. And if this river is water, what's in a river? Water. Okay. Is that a river? Yes. So that must be water. If you handed them a water bottle filled with water from the river, how could it have been a lie? The answer to this is simple. Because when they asked, oh, is this water? Or when you said, yeah, it's just some water, here, have some water, there were implicit messages. And if the implicit statements were wrong, you're still lying. You don't have to lie explicitly to lie, right? Um, you'd be handing them, even if it's still what you would consider water. Well, is it still water there? You would consider that contaminated water or dirty water, but not here. No one would ever ask, oh, what's in a river? And somebody else say, oh, dirty water. I mean, maybe if it was an especially dirty river, but for the most part, I think people would just say water because that is most of what is in the river. You know, it becomes contaminated when it's in the water bottle because water that we expect to be dirty when in a river is unexpectedly dirty when it's in a water bottle. Do you understand the implicit messaging here? So, how can this be the case if we're just using by the book's prescriptive language? The answer is it can't. If you're a pure linguistic prescriptivist who only believes that words refer to what they refer to and that's it, then this doesn't make any sense. It can't be explained. But if you believe that there are implicit messages that have to be taken into account, if you're referring to this as a process of utility, is this water in this water bottle? Well, that depends on whether or not it's useful to imagine water as being water like this or being water like this. The only way to distinguish is by understanding the use case of the water. What utility is being served? What function is being carried out? And is this the kind of water that people expect associated with this function? To use a somewhat crass analogy, I go on Grindr looking for a hot, gay DILF to fuck, and I see this. Is the use case being fulfilled? Is utility being served here correctly? Have I found my Grindr DILF? I don't think I have, actually. There's a categorical error here. Some utility is not being served. The use case of my DILF hunting is not being served appropriately. One more example. This is filtered water, but let's say it's tap water. Okay, tap water in the United States has some chemicals that are put into it, minerals. It'll keep your teeth clean, whatever, just basic stuff. Now, you want water to not be pure. Pure water apparently will actually bind to the inside of your body in a chemically destructive way. It'll kill you. The H2O molecules need some other agent in the substance that they want to bond with in order to inert, like in an organic chemistry sense. And well, you don't want to die, right? So filtered water is not pure H2O by any means. There's stuff you want to keep in there. But let's say it's just tap water. Okay, so this has a bunch of stuff in it. I don't know, fluoride to keep the frogs gay, whatever. All right. So let's imagine it's 1 part per 1,000 that's not water. Actually, I'll Google it. Hold on. How pure is tap water, Washington? Because it varies by state and city. How pure? I want a parts per million here. Can I get a parts per million? Okay, here, ppm. Give me the ppm. 2020 drinking water. Come on. Come on. Yeah, parts per million. Water entering DC, regulated contaminants, copper, detected contaminants. Okay, here we go. Analysis of drinking water for the District of Columbia 2019 and all the shit they found in it. Oh, you got your fluoride, your nitrate, your radium, your chlorine, your total triheliomethates, your haloacetic acids, your aluminum, butanone. Look, okay, there's a lot of stuff in here. All this is measured by parts per million. So if we take a look, oh, there's arsenic. That's cool. Arsenic's right here. So if we take a look at parts per million, right, like that, you can see in the detected average 40, 38, 50, a couple hundred. Yeah, a couple hundred like that. Regulated contaminants, drink water, EPA limits, fluoride. Units, parts per million, EPA drinking water, water additive which promotes strong teeth. Okay, so let's say 1,000 out of 1 million. So yeah, 1 out of 1,000 parts per million in tap water is not water. Let's just go with that. Simple, simple. 1 of 1,000, okay? Now let's imagine that I've got some tap water, remember, which is 1 in 1,000 parts, is not water. I hand it to a person. Here, have some water. They drink it. It tastes totally normal. It's tap water. They're fine. Have I lied to them? Probably not. Now imagine instead that instead of there being a variety of different chemicals that make up the 1 part per thousand that aren't water, instead all those together are actually cyanide. 1 part per thousand cyanide. And so the amount of water in the water is still the same. It hasn't changed. The amount of water in this cyanide water is identical to the amount in tap water. It is as water as tap water is. But it'll kill you. It'll get you. It'll kill you. It'll kill you dead. Drink a bunch of this and you'll die. Would I be lying to somebody if I handed them this when they asked me for water? Obviously. And how can that be the case? In both cases, you have been asked for water, and in both cases, you provided a substance which had the exact equal amount of water. Can any of this be explained with a pure linguistic prescriptivist approach? I think not. I think you have to go by use case. You have to go by utility. And once you're going by utility, it's way easier to argue. Trans women are women, trans men are men, non-binary, blah-de-blah. None of these definitions exist in some kind of cosmic defined sense, No way that kills you? Oh, for sure it would, yeah. It does not take a lot of cyanide. How much cyanide is lethal? A lethal dose of cyanide salts is 200 to 300 milligrams, meaning that you would only have to drink 200 to 300 grams in order to die off the water. 200 to 300 grams. That's all you need. Yeah, it ain't good. Okay, y'all get my point. This argument affect the definition of literally? The definition of literally has been fucked for a long time now. Vaush, please explain this to me. If you reduce it to an argument of utility, doesn't that cast non-passing trans people aside? No, not at all. Because once you think about it in a pragmatic sense, first of all, if we're going by utility, obviously sex and gender aren't the same. And second of all, given that gender is sort of an identifier, there's no reason why people shouldn't have control over how they're perceived as in that function, We allow people to determine other identifiers when it comes to their presentation and appearance, stuff that they consider elements of their personality, No, so the utility argument is very much in favor of trans rights. That's why all medical orgs basically back it. So, first image is a transcript snippet from a Vaush video entitled The Detransition or Grift. Second is from a Reuters investigation published very recently. You'd have to take these people seriously. They really, really do make it seem like you get on hormones with just like no consultation whatsoever. You have to meet with the doctors. You have to go through a whole pediatric psychological analysis. They have to vet that this is a good idea for you. It can take years. It's a whole process. It takes a lot of effort, time, money, consideration. And in interviews with Reuters, doctors and other staff at 18 gender clinic across the country described their process for evaluating patients. None described anything like the months-long assessments DeVries and her colleagues adopted in their research. In most of the clinics, a team of professionals, typically a social worker, a psychologist, and a doctor specializing in adolescent medicine or endocrinology, initially meets with the parents and child for 2 hours or more to get to know the family, their medical history, their goals for treatment. They also discuss the benefits and risks of treatment options. 7 of the clinics said that if they don't see any red flags and the child and parents are in agreement, they are comfortable prescribing puberty blockers or hormones based on the first visit, depending on the age of the child. Or it only the case everywhere. Well, I'd be fine with puberty blockers coming out easier. I don't know. Every time I've seen, um, Pigeon, shush. Is this contradictory? Well, potentially. Every time I've heard about, the process, how does this disprove what you've said? Because if you can get hormones really quickly without a long, like, evaluation process, then that would disprove what I said. I would want to read the article to see the specifics, you know, a little more clearly. But um, every time I've like heard of or even looked into stuff related to the pediatric prescription of HRT, it's been a pretty involved process. Interesting, they didn't link the article. Well, we can just look. Hold on. Reuters. At most of the clinics, a team of professionals. There we go. Whoa, that's zoomed in. As more transgender children seek medical care, families confront many unknowns. Across the United States, thousands of youth are lining up for gender-affirming care, but when families decide to take the medical route, they must make decisions about life-altering treatments that have little scientific evidence for their long. Whoa! Hold on, hold on, hold on. Life-altering treatments that have little scientific evidence for their long-term safety and efficacy. We have plenty of evidence on the effects of hormones and puberty blockers on people. This is Reuters. What are we doing? What are we doing here? This is from the investigate section. We got any sussy people here? I'll read the article. Oh, this just links to their emails. It doesn't. Okay. On the 2 hour back from the hospital, 2 hour drive, Daniel Boyer kept replacing the doctor, replaying the. Why was her then 12-year-old child Reese? Hearing voices? Was she using illegal drugs? Had she ever been hospitalized for psychiatric treatment? She ever harmed herself? Danielle was still shaken when she and Reese arrived home in the small town nestled in the bend of the Ohio River. Dinner would have to wait. Right off the bat, I don't trust this. Highly narrativized stuff like this, designed to pull at your fucking emotion strings. Yeah, the storytelling bullshit. Just give me the fucking information. They were asking us these sad, terrible questions, she told Steve Boyer, as the two sat in their garage. Do you know kids who have tried to kill themselves? I had no idea. Race? Rias. Okay. Was assigned male at birth. By the time that she was 4, it was clear to her parents she identified as a girl. She referred to herself as a girl. She wanted to dress as a girl. But her parents feared for her safety if they let her live openly as a girl in their tightly knit rural community, so they struck an uneasy compromise. At home, Rias could be a girl wearing makeup and dresses. At school, around town and family photos, Rias would remain a boy. A difficult situation to be in, to be sure. Rias chafed the restrictions. When she started middle school, she grew increasingly anxious about what puberty would bring. Oh, for sure, Princess Family. A facial hair and Adam's apple, a deeper voice. That's when Danielle sought help at Akron's Children's Hospital. Hold on. If this person has been living as a girl confidently and dedicatedly for 8 years and is worried about the effects puberty would bring, this is like a perfect puberty blocker or hormone blocker case study right here. This is like a frictionless vacuum spherical cow situation right here. You know, if we imagine gender as a frictionless sphere, this is what I've always wanted, Rias told her mother as they left the hospital. Afterwards, the pair went on a celebratory. Yeah, the staff said they could treat Rias with puberty-blocking drugs and sex hormones to help her transition. Danielle was relieved after struggling in isolation for years, do what they thought was best. Boyers are getting expert help from people who understand the situation. This is her? This is just what puberty blockers plus hormones does if you catch it before male puberty? God damn. But the initial consultation brought troubling new questions. The doctor at the Akron clinic told Danielle and Reyes that puberty blockers could weaken Reyes' bones. Okay. The effects on her brain development and fertility weren't well understood. Wait, hold on. Hold on. Wait. I've researched this enough that I feel confident talking on this. First of all, there is some evidence that puberty blockers can potentially weaken the recipient's bones, but the effects can be mitigated and seem to be less present if you get on the puberty blockers early, if I remember correctly. What's more, this is a well-researched thing. I do not like the implication that this is like a potential risk when there have been decades of research. Furthermore, see this here on brain development and fertility? Well, first of all, this is a trans woman, or trans girl or whatever. So the effect of hormones on fertility, she's trying to avoid the fertility. The fertility that's being referenced here is male fertility. I think the stance here is known. As for effects on brain development, we know what the effects of puberty blockers are on brain development. We already have that. They've been using puberty blockers on precocious, pubescent, cisgender children since the 1980s. We have research on this. The effect seems to be nothing, by the way. The effects that we have on brain development from those studies on precocious puberty in cisgender children, they are that the precocious, basically it's like this. Like, it's literally like this, okay? If you can imagine, like, the IQ of, like, a regular kid as they grow older doing like this, basically. Like, as they get older, they get smarter or whatever. The precocious puberty thing does this, right? And then they hit puberty early, and that means earlier brain development. But then they take the precocious puberty meds because, like, it's not good to do the early puberty like that. It can be bad for you. So then it rounds off, and then they end up, like, norming out with everyone else. Basically, because if you didn't do that, if you had precocious puberty, all you would do is you would, like, level out, like, sooner and reach the same point. They don't make you smarter or stupider. It just affects literally the rate at which you develop, you know? They are considered safe. Without treatment, the doctor said Reyes would be at an increased risk of suicide. Okay? Mention of suicide raised the stakes. She's been asking for how many years now to be a girl, Danielle said to her husband as they sat talking to Garage in the evening. We just keep telling her no and we're crushing her. If they can help us, let's do this. Oh, the U.S. has seen an explosion in recent years in the number of children who identify as a gender different from what they are designated at birth. Gender-affirming care can cover a spectrum of interventions. It can entail adopting a child's preferred name and pronouns and letting them dress in alignment with their gender identity, called social transitioning. It can incorporate therapy or other forms of psychological treatment. And from around the start of adolescence, it can include medical interventions such as puberty blockers, hormones, and in some cases, surgery. In all of it, the aim is to support and affirm the child's gender identity. But families that go the medical route venture onto uncertain ground where science has yet to catch up with practice. While the number of gender clinics treating children in the U.S. has grown from 0 to more than 100 in the past 15, and waiting lists are long, strong evidence of the efficacy and possible long-term consequences of that treatment remains scant. This is bullshit right here. We have so many studies on the mental well-being of transition, like hormone or surgery or whatever else, even social transition, for people who start as minors and people who start as adults. That is just not. So I like how it says strong evidence, which means they get to, like, weasel out, because there's tons of evidence, you know, but maybe strong evidence would have to have 1 million people in a sample size, you know. A tweet chain in the article seems like some others are taking issue with it as well. Like, there is plenty of it. You can argue that there should be more evidence. Jesus Christ, yet another feature-length litany of anti-trans talking points under the guise of exploring the tricky debate about youth transition. As usual, we get repeated questions about whether too many kids are transitioning, despite clear evidence that they aren't. The largest number here, roughly 4,200 kids prescribed hormones. 4,200 kids? This is like that study in the UK where they were like, number of young girls declaring themselves boys has increased 1,600%, and it went from like 1 to 16. 4,200 in all of 2021? Okay, so this story is bullshit. Puberty blockers and sex hormones do not have U.S. Food and Drug Administration approval for children's gender clear. No clinical trials have established their safety for such off-label use. What? Puberty blockers are only used on children. They're puberty blockers. We've been using them since the 80s. Don't have approval for children's gender care. Establish their safety for off-label use. What? We have all the data we have on puberty blockers are on children's use of puberty blockers because it's children. They're puberty blockers. No, Inkblue, I think there's a difference between the hormone blockers that are used to stop puberty and the hormone blockers that are used to like stop T intake, like if you're already an adult or whatever. Who else would give you puberty blockers? The issue that I have here is just that they're framing it as though there might be a safety issue for puberty blockers when we've been using them for decades and they're always used on they're children. It's puberty blockers. Puberty happens in children. As for sex hormones, there is research on their effect on children. I mean, sex hormones like testosterone and estrogen are the things that are produced when you go through puberty. So if you block the puberty in a young trans girl and then give them estrogen, you're simulating the effect of a female puberty. We have some study on this. We have some research on this. It's not as much as we do for the effects of HRT on adults, but some of the studies that I've gone through have talked about the positive effects if used on like 16-year-olds or whatever. The drug's long-term effects on fertility and sexual function remain unclear. This is not true. Again, we have separate studies on puberty blockers and HRT and combined studies on both with regards to sexual, medical, and social outcomes. I don't know where they're pulling this from. What evidence do they want? And in 2016, the FDA ordered makers of puberty blockers to add a warning about psychiatric problems. The drug's label after the agency received several reports of suicidal thoughts in children who were taking them. I don't know anything about that, so I can't really comment on it. There are a million things this could potentially mean. More broadly, no large-scale studies. I like how they have to add large scales here. Have tracked people who receive gender-related medical care as children to determine how many remain satisfied with their treatment as they age and how many eventually regretted detransition. Okay, this article is 100% an op now. 100% an op. Yes, there absolutely are. 100% there are. We absolutely have studies on like regret rates, and people who stay like transitioning. Yeah, no, this is not Fed. Who wrote this? Chad Terhune. An award-winning health reporter based in Los Angeles. He's got a check mark. You know he's a bad guy. Right off the bat. 3 people are named. He's up front. England's National Health Service drafts stricter oversight of trans youth care. The NIH, the U.S. government agency responsible for medical and public health research, told Reuters that the evidence is limited on whether these treatments pose short or long-term health risks for transgender and other gender-diverse adolescents. The NIH has funded a comprehensive study to examine medical health and other outcomes for about 400 trans youth treated at 4 U.S. hospitals. However, long-term results are years away and may not address concerns such as fertility and cognitive development. So, quick question, lads. How can you simultaneously want more research done on a new kind of medical treatment, but also be fear-mongering about people engaging in that medical treatment? Like, how would you ever get any case studies from which to do research? The concern would be whether or not people are being lied to when they're given this this information. But right now, the info that we have on transitioning is overwhelmingly quite positive. Same with puberty blockers. U.S. children aged 6 to 17 diagnosed with gender dysphoria from 2017 through 2021, like 100,000. U.S. children starting on puberty blockers or hormones over the 5-year period, 17,000 people over 5 years. 17,000 people over 5 years. Among the entire adult Dutch cohort, the reported regret rate is less than 2% and has fallen with time. Yeah, no, literally like everything that we have. Look at this. It maxed at 2% back in the 80s, and now it's down Regret actual down here currently seems to be at 0%. It's just so much of the evidence that we have on the effects of transitioning have been so overwhelmingly positive. These numbers are probably a significant undercount since they don't include children whose records did not specify a gender dysphoria diagnosis or whose treatment wasn't covered by insurance. Could be millions, actually. Social acceptance. The surging numbers reflect in part the success of years of advocacy for trans rights, which doctors say have made more children and their families comfortable seeking help. Trans children still live with discrimination, bullying, and threats of violence, but as trans identity has become more visible in popular culture, children with gender dysphoria have gained ready access on TV and social media to positive representations of young people who have received professional gender affirming care. Oh, hell yeah, Timbershed. Gender care for minors gained further legitimacy as medical groups endorsed the practice and began issuing treatment guidelines. Chief among them is the World Professional Association for Trans Health, a 4,000 member org that includes medical, legal, academic, and other professionals from around the world. Over the past decade, its guidelines have been echoed by the likes of the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Endocrine Society, which represents specialists in hormones. In its later standards of care, released in September, WPATH notes the paucity of research supporting the long-term effectiveness of medical treatment for adolescents with gender dysphoria. As a result, the guidelines say a systemic review regarding outcomes of treatment in adolescents is not possible. The Endocrine Society, in its own guidelines, acknowledges the low or very low certainty of evidence supporting its recommendations. I would like to see that. Clinical practice guidelines for the Endocrine Society. Where could I find them saying low or very low? If they had made the statement publicly that they had low or very low certainty of evidence, wouldn't that be easy to access publicly? I don't see any pop ups for it. Federal government eased the path to treatment in 2016. I guess the thing that really bothers me is that you'd think if there was any real harm being done here, there would be one single study showing it, you know? Like a single one. Today, more than half of states pay for gender transition treatment through Medicaid, healthcare for poor people. 9 states exclude youth gender care from Medicaid coverage. Florida and its Medicaid prohibition says treatments for gender dysphoria do not meet the definition of medical necessity. Let's go off of the Florida state government's recommendations, which are outlined by politicians let's cite them in our article on trans healthcare. That's a good idea. The disparity among states is symptomatic of how gender affirming care has become a flashpoint in the nation's highly polarized politics. Many conservatives decry it as a form of child abuse. You don't disfigure 10, 12, 13-year-old kids based on gender dysphoria, said Ron DeSantis. Alabama, Arkansas, and Texas have enacted laws or policy to broadly limit children's access to care, all of them since blocked by courts. In more than a dozen other states, including Ohio, where the Boyers live, legislators have introduced bills that would ban care or penalize providers for treating children. Meanwhile, the Assistant Secretary at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services says gender affirming care for trans youth is essential and can be life saving. Oh, nice. At the same time, at least a dozen states, including New York, California, and Massachusetts, have aligned with trans advocates and many medical providers by ensuring that children are guaranteed access to care. Levine, who said that everyone in the medical industry agrees on the value and the importance of gender affirming care, was right insofar as healthcare providers generally agree that anyone with gender dysphoria has a right to supportive care. But whether that entails social transition or counseling and therapy or medical interventions, whether that entails, I'm so tired. Levine, okay. Whether that entails social transition, counseling and therapy, or medical intervention. But her statement glossed over deep fissures that have opened within the gender care community over the way treatment has evolved in the U.S. as new patients pour into clinics. That's kind of like a fucking Weasley way of saying it. So Levine is correct in that there's no argument among medical professionals about the value of gender affirming care. And then this article is like, well, they left out how there's this new gulf that's opened up after agreeing that they were correct to say that. A growing number of gender care professionals say that in the rush to meet surging demand, too many of their peers are pushing too many families to pursue treatment for their children before they undergo the comprehensive assessments recommended in professional guidelines. Is there any evidence for this? This could even be true, but I would need like evidence because this is literally just like a fucking op-ed where they're just saying it, you know? It is journalistic malpractice to write this article without acknowledging that so far the literally all evidence done on the value of hormone therapy has been beneficial. Like, how can you write an article on this and be an honest guy and like not be like, okay, listen, first of all, we have to acknowledge that literally like everything we have on transitioning, the rates of detransition and regret, all of this, um, like they're very beneficial for gender transition. Oh yeah, STL, we went over this one. We went over this one just the other day, actually. Yeah. Less than 1% to 1 to 2% on sometimes or always regretting their bottom surgery. Even bottom surgery, the full fucking genital switcheroo. 8,000 patients with like less than a percent of people reporting regret. Insane. Insane. Not mentioning that stuff is so deeply dishonest. These assessments are crucial, these medical professionals say, because as the number of pediatric patients has surged, so has the number of those whose main source of distress might not be persistent gender dysphoria. Some could be gender fluid with a gender identity that changes over time. Some may have mental health problems that complicate their cases. For these children, medical treatment may pose unnecessary risks when counseling or other non medical interventions would be the better choice. I'm afraid what we're getting are false positives, and we've subjected them to irreversible physical changes, said Dr. Erica Anderson, a clinical psychologist who previously worked at UC San Francisco's gender clinic. Hold on. Let's just make sure this person doesn't have a fucking large Twitter account where they have a website. Dun 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 dun. Okay. They don't seem to be anti-trans. It's far from easy being trans in America. This is what it's like. I know personally the existential threat to trans persons. Okay. This person does not seem to be, FYI, has this surgeon gone too far? Florida sex change surgeon who dubs herself Dr. Titus Deletus reported to Consumer Watchdog for deceptively luring teens with gimmicky TikTok video Okay, this is a whole thing. This is a whole Florida woman thing. You know, we'll one thing at a time, okay? Oh, I want to point out, by the way, as long as we're talking like preferred systems or whatever, I don't think children should be able to just get access to hormones right away. Or I should say, I would think like I think some time should be taken to get an assessment before they go ahead with it. The problem is right now our mental health systems are so fucked. Like so in the best world, in the coolest world, right? It wouldn't be that tough to get like a therapist or like a gender clinic who would like see you for a bit, and maybe you meet with them for a couple of months or whatever, and they'd be like, okay, yeah, like this seems like a thing, you know, let's do what we can. Let's talk about blockers, let's talk about hormones. But we don't live in the good world, we live in the shit world, where like this stuff is incredibly expensive and incredibly like gate kept, and difficult to access, and there are massive fucking lines, you know. So depending on where you are, we might not be in that situation. So in that situation, like, should people have to wait a 3-year wait list before they can get the hormones that they want, or should they be able to just get it like pretty easily? I think if you had to choose between gatekeeping that was so bad that it delayed by years access to medical care for trans stuff, and being able to just fucking get it, like just like yippee, I can go to the store and drink estrogen or whatever. I think the latter would lead to less harm because I think free and open access to this would be better than extremely gate kept access. Yippee. I read an article that people in 2018 are just getting their treatments. Keep in mind, even this article acknowledges that the wait lists for these clinics have fucking skyrocketed. There are people who are waiting years to get consultation for this stuff. And the reason now they're claiming that some people are getting rushed along is a product of that increased demand. Ideally, I think it would be good to get pediatric consultation beforehand. You know, really work it out. In Europe, country concerned that too many children might unnecessarily put at risk, as countries like Finland and Sweden that were early to embrace gender care for children now limit access to care. The UK is shutting down its main clinic for children's gender care and overhauling the system after an independent review found some staff felt, quote, pressure to adopt an unquestioning affirmative approach. I don't I haven't seen that the UK, Finland, and Sweden's changes to their medical guidelines were influenced by medical research, only by politics. Like, this is a political concern. This is I disagree, not I have evidence to show that they're wrong. The Finland, Swedish, and UK stuff, I thought that was all changes in like the accepted politics, not like they found research that indicated they should behave differently. For sure, Princess Sammy, yeah. None of this should be taken seriously because what starts as I just want to listen to concerns always ends as like overt anti-trans discrimination. Especially when it's framed this way. Again, I don't mind people doing the we have concerns thing if they really do have concerns. But in this case, the framing of this article is just so slanted, so narrativized. And it's also such a long article. Listen to the way this is phrased. Ranged against those advising caution in the US are members of the gender care community who say that denying treatment to any child with gender dysphoria is unethical and dangerous. So, ranged against those advising caution. Maybe those advising caution should support their statements with some fucking evidence as opposed to just saying, like, we feel pressured to be too pro trans. Shouldn't have to jump through hoops to prove your own transness. Dakar and officials at other clinics said the waiting list of many facilities showed children already face significant barriers to treatment due to a shortage of providers and a persistent stigma in healthcare attached to trans patients. If you put unnecessary roadblocks in the way, we know the kid will still be trans and they will continue to experience deep psychological stress that increases the risk of suicide attempts or suicide itself. There are no studies of the long-term outcomes of gender-related medical treatment for youth who have not undergone a comprehensive assessment. The guidelines note. Without such evidence, the document adds, the decision to start gender-affirming medical interventions may not be in the long-term best interest of the young person at that time. How would you even gather that evidence if there were no people from whom to gather that evidence? How would you ever know whether you're being too cautious with your ascriptions of trans medical care if you didn't ever loosen them and see what happens? I'm not against potentially gatekeeping if the gatekeeping can be justified medically. If there was medical evidence for the gatekeeping, if they could find evidence that said, like, hey, this practice is causing harm, then I support restricting that practice. That practice. Right now, the evidence we have clearly leans in favor of there being less gatekeeping for this stuff. It's in favor of a less strict approach. That's where the evidence points. Maybe stuff will change, but that's how else are we going to learn anything? It's like those people who say there are no studies on the long-term effects of the COVID vaccine. Yeah, no shit. It was invented in 2020. Reyes says young trans people she saw on television and online helped her realize she could transition. Okay, we're back with the Boyers now. Steve and Danielle had no direct experience with trans people when Reyes was born. Reyes. By around age 4, she referred to herself as a girl, played with girls at friends' houses, became fascinated with women's clothing and jewelry. This is such a like 5-star example right here. Like, seriously, how many trans women at 4 are like, yes, I am a girl. I will now only do girl things. Thank you. This is it's not usually that fucking overt. On Christmas morning 2011, shortly before her 4th birthday, Reyes was thrilled when she got much of what she wanted from Santa, Barbie dolls, a dollhouse, toys in pink and purple. But Danielle feared Reyes wouldn't be accepted as a trans girl in their conservative community, and she wanted to protect her children from the stares, hateful comments, and broken relationships that would inevitably come. The agreement was house only. Reyes constantly pushed back from early on would friend. By the way, this reads to me like the parents don't want to deal with it. Like, you can be a girl in the house, you know? It can be tough in areas like this. I mean, if the community is genuinely hostile, but I don't know. You just can't keep that stuff in. Reyes pushed back from early on when friends and neighbors complimented her as a cute little boy. She would correct them. She was a girl. Danielle felt compelled to correct Reyes. Danielle sought compromises. In elementary school, they often settled on outfits and Reyes of neutral black leggings and brightly colored t-shirts. She picked up dresses and hairpins at yard sales and let Reyes wear them at home. On trips into town, Danielle had Reyes take off the dress she wore over her boys' clothes and leave them in the car. This is so much effort. Jesus. And as middle school and puberty loomed, Reyes started sneaking bras and mascara to school. She repeatedly texted her mom, will you start calling me a girl? Television and the internet had opened Reyes' eyes to new possibilities. She watched I Am Jazz, the reality TV show about Jazz Jennings, a trans girl who socially transitioned at an early age. and went on to take puberty blockers and hormones after surgery. She watched young people on YouTube discuss gender dysphoria and their transitions and saw the before and after images they shared. On Instagram, she followed Nikita Dragun, a makeup artist and model who came out as trans as a teenager and now has 9 million followers. This is actually a thing, Reyes recalled thinking at the time. I can actually do this. No comment. Reyes, the type of child the doctors in the Netherlands focused on their pioneering work in the early 2000s on medical treatment for... More recently, though, many of the patients flooding into clinics wouldn't meet Dutch researchers' criteria. Some have significant psychiatric problems, including depression, anxiety, and eating disorders. Okay, just because the Dutch researchers wanted, like, a group of perfect, neutral patients on which to test, like, puberty blockers for trans youth, that does not mean that you can only provide fucking medical care to this is like saying researchers developed a new psychiatric guideline and tested it on people who, they didn't have any mental problems to make sure it was fine. They were like, okay, well, so this only works on people with no mental problems. So we can't do it on other people, you know? Like, why would you, what standard of practice could you possibly have that you would only test it and then it's like, okay, so we can only now do it on the perfect group that we tested it on? Gender treatment for people with depression. Why would people who need gender treatment have depression? And for reasons not understood, a disproportionate number of patients are assigned female at birth. In the NIH study of children's treatments outcomes now underway, Children's Wisconsin Hospital in Milwaukee said 65% of its patients were assigned female at birth. Some researchers in clinics say transgender females are less likely to see treatment because they face greater social stigma for doing so. Critics of children's gender care blame peer pressure reinforced by social media for boosting the number of transgender males seeking care. Peer pressure? Who outside of the deranged fantasies of conservatives is being peer pressured into being transgender? What? It's the gay panic all over again. It literally is. There's no evidence being cited here. It's just like, oh yeah, maybe they're being peer pressured into transitioning into a male. Okay, sure. This is so fucking long, dude. Okay, this is the section right here that guy screenshotted to epically own me. Ducar and others were disappointed that in some of its updated standards of care, WPATH noted that social influence may impact some adolescents' gender identity. They said the idea of a social contagion infecting children perpetuates an offensive misconception that being trans is a fad spread among impressionable adolescents by friends and social media and fails to recognize the stigma, bullying, and discrimination trans people experience. Okay. Are you ready for my hot take, guys? Being trans, especially as a kid, is a fad. And people are mad because it's replacing the pre-existing fad, which was a binary gender model. You think that wasn't a fad? You think we always had that shit? People's gender identities are going to be heavily influenced by what is considered socially acceptable, because the difference between somebody who 100 years ago might have been a gay feminine man and somebody who today might decide that they would rather live as a woman, that's a difference that can be influenced by the availability of certain social avenues, medical avenues. And that's fine. That's okay. I think it's time to take the argument a step further. Sure, there's no gigantic trans contagion or whatever. But if there was, so what? I don't think there is. I think it's going to level out. But if there was, who cares? Like, really, like, make that argument. Like, okay, so people want to do a trans... Okay, fine. We live in a free society, don't we? Don't we? Should we not... Do we not live in a society where people's, like, basic modes of expression are of their own to decide? What are you going to do? Like, the government's going to step in and go like, no, you can't actually be free. We need everyone to be cisgender. Literally what they're advocating for. We should be maximizing self-benefit. If it benefits them, then... Personally, I think that the more time passes when it comes to the whole trans acceptance thing, let's say we don't all die due to climate change or fascism, you know, let's put that one forward. In my opinion, the interest in medical transition is going to decrease a lot. I'm sorry, like bottom surgery. Like, the interest in bottom surgery is going to decrease a lot. The interest in hormones, HRT, is going to decrease as well. And it's going to be more about, like, gender fluidity with time. I still believe that a lot of not just transgender, transsexual people, I still believe that a lot of transsexual people wouldn't be so up in arms about, medical intervention if they could be accepted and fully perceived as their preferred gender identity, regardless of their biology. Obviously, that varies person to person, but this stuff is heavily socially influenced, We have a pretty strong social association between woman and fat, juicy pussy. These terms are associated. But if we had no association, honest to God, spend enough time on trans Twitter these days, and it's like, women can have pussies? Swear. Fucking bread tube, man. And the more people sort of de-associate those categories, I think the less people will feel it necessary to keep up with the medical stuff. Arch enemy, I did not say everyone. Don't get people up in arms. Oh, this doesn't apply to me. I don't care who asked you. It's fine. I said less interested in, not no interest in. Keep your hormones and your bottom surgery. It's fine. It's great. I never said it would all go away. I'm fucking bored. Can we just read the fucking Twitter thread and how this is dumb? Also, as usual for a panic fueled by anecdotes, even the anecdotes don't indicate a worryingly lax assessment timeline. The subject of the story declared her trans identity at age 4. She began social transition at 11. She had her first appointment at the gender clinic in 2020. She started puberty blockers 8 months later. 8 months later? 7 months later. After 13 months on puberty blockers and 18 months of full social transition, she starts hormones. What exactly is the problem here? This is a nearly 2-year process from the first appointment to any irreversible medical treatment. That is true. Why would the Reuters article not focus on a subject of this perceived, like, rushed transition timeline, right? Like, if the article is about getting rushed through, why'd they choose somebody who wasn't rushed through? Like every other story on this, it appears to have recruited sources from transphobic parenting social groups. It barely addresses the harm of not transitioning. Also true, this study is not even acknowledging that harm and implies that bringing up trans suicide rates is an act of manipulation. Reuters interviewed parents of 39 minors who sought gender-affirming care. Parents of 28 of those children said they felt pressure to rush. Wait, why the fuck are we just taking the word of parents on this? You do not, if we're talking about medical outcomes for children, you do not ask the parents. Kate, a 53-year-old mother in New Jersey, said she and her husband were shocked in November 2020 when their 13-year-old told them he was transgender. The child, assigned female birth, had always played with other girls and never expressly identified as a boy. They just thought their child was a tomboy. Now they learned he had chosen a male name and wanted to start puberty blockers and get breast removing surgery. After an initial one-on-one consult of little more than an hour with the teen, a psychiatrist said he was a good candidate for puberty blockers, Kate said. An endocrinologist recommended the same after talking with the family for 15 minutes. Kate and her husband also attended a parent support group organized by a local gender therapist. Through it all, Kate said, the message was let your kid drive the bus. Wherever they lead you, that's what you should do. I mean, right now, there are 2 roads you can go down. If there are 2 roads, and one of them is listen to the kid, and the other one is listen to the parent, the listen to the kid one is proven to be the better one right now. The listen to the parent one has not been proven to be the better one. Kate, who asked that only her first name be used to protect her child's identity, had read up on puberty blockers. Concerned about their off-label use and possible side effects, she wouldn't agree to treatment. She supports her son's social transition, using his preferred pronouns and buying the tape he uses to bind his breasts. But, wait, tape? You should use a binder. You're not using duct tape, are you? Okay, whatever. But she thinks he is too young to make decisions about life-altering medical treatments. Children, when they're 13 or 14, are sometimes totally different people from when they're 18 or 19, she said. As a result of her decision, her relationship with her son has been fractured, Kate said. If he chooses to pursue medical treatment after he turns 18, she said she and her husband won't be happy, but they won't stand in the way either. I wonder if this person has any underlying ideological biases here that might be influencing their perspective. If the concern is that they're rushing into treatment, why would waiting 5 years until he's a medical adult and then getting support still make them not happy? It's almost like they have a pre-existing bias against their son's gender identity, And it might not actually be, medical caution that's motivating their behavior. The fragile truce between Reyes and her parents, girl at home, boy everywhere else, collapsed after Reyes started middle school. In December 2019, Danielle let Reyes, 11 at the time, wear makeup and black bell-bottom pants to a basketball game at a nearby school. Danielle's mother, Ruth Alden, was at the game, and afterwards she scolded Danielle. Oh, Alden, nice meme. It was embarrassing the family. Wait, the grandmother? Okay, so we're listening right now to a grandmother in a rural area. Let's get her opinion on this issue. The rural conservative grandmother said that it was embarrassing to the family for their trans daughter to have makeup and bell-bottom pants at a basketball game. And the other kids are going to beat the crap out of her. Her granddaughter could be driven to suicide, she warned. Thank you for citing this relevant medical authority on the subject. The rural conservative grandmother, whose perspective on this is, I'm sure, fully in line with a responsible and well-informed understanding of these issues. It's so the grandma here is fear-mongering over the daughter being bullied, but the only one bullying her right now is the grandmother. Like, it's embarrassing the family, other kids are going to beat the crap. Right now, you're the problem. Danielle was incensed and despondent. She felt trapped. She had long worried that she was pushing Reyes towards suicide by insisting that her identity remain a secret. Yeah. Having your daughter fucking pretend to be a boy outside for 8 years while living as a girl in the house is fucking weird. Yeah, that's very strange. You're gonna give her a fucking complex. Jesus. You're a girl in the house, but you're a boy outside? What kind of fucking mental nightmare shit? Jesus. That night, Danielle yelled at her own mother, "What do I do, Mom? Regardless of my decision, I could have a dead child." I like how this is being framed as like the peril and threat of the mom and grandmother rather than the daughter. Early in the new year, Danielle, desperate for guidance, joined a Facebook group for Ohio parents of trans children that eventually led her to the Children's Hospital, a 2-hour drive away in Akron, for the meeting with Dr. Crystal Cole and her team. Dr. Cole, an Akron native and specialist in adolescent medicine, founded the hospital's Center for Gender Affirming Medicine in 2019. The clinic saw 25 patients that year. It is now treating more than 350 young people. Cool. 350 young people being treated by a single clinic is not like a crazy large amount, by the way. Like if you treated one person, one single separate person, one day every year, you wouldn't even have enough to fill up the whole year. You probably book more than one person per day. In their 2-hour meeting, Cole started with general questions about Reyes, her family, their medical history. She sharpened the focus on Reyes' mental health and readiness for treatment. Danielle exhaled with relief after Reyes responded that she wasn't hearing voices, wasn't using illegal drugs, and had never tried to harm herself. The doctor then laid out treatment options. Social transitioning, could opt to receive counseling and therapy to support her through transition. She could receive treatment to medically transition. At age 12, Reyes was a candidate for puberty suppression to spare her the masculinizing features she feared, with known and unknown risks. Every time with known and unknown risks, we have studies on puberty blockers from the 80s. They keep saying this. Look, puberty blocker, also called puberty inhibitor and hormone blockers. Supported by 7 American medical associations, 4 Australian medical associations, the British Medical Association, and the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. In Europe, some medical group and countries have discouraged or limited the use of puberty blockers, including Sweden and Finland. Did they do it for medical reasons or for political reasons? Oh! Guess what article they cite? The Finland one cites the Reuters article that we're looking at. And this one from Pink News with a correct title, because Pink News is based. Swedish Health Board wants doctors to stop prescribing life-saving puberty blockers. The new guidelines say that they should only be prescribed in exceptional cases and claim their use is backed by uncertain science. Bullshit. Oh, right, I don't speak Swedish. Forgot. Swedish Health Board cites junk science. Linden says the Socialstyrelsen officials had requested the Swedish Agency for Health Technology Assessment provide it with all relevant studies on the effect and safety of hormone research. When combing through the compiled research, SBU concluded that more research into puberty blockers must be done. This is despite puberty blockers already being well studied. A 2021 study found their use helped trans teens feel happier. I remember this. Among the evidence the social Styrelson cites is an American study vastly debunked as, oh no, it's the rapid onset gender dysphoria study, the one where they got medical information on trans youth by pulling moms that they had gotten off forums made for trans parents of trans kids who were not supportive of their transition. It was literally hate boards that they pull people off of. This is like getting medical research on the psychiatric nature of like black trauma by asking people off Stormfront. Jesus Christ. Okay, yeah. So we can safely say that the Swedish health board did this for political reasons, not for medical reasons. Look! Delaying or temporarily suspending puberty is a medical treatment for children whose puberty started abnormally early. Puberty blockers have been used on label since the 80s to treat precocious puberty in children and were approved for use in treating precocious puberty in children by the FDA in 1993. So they were used without the FDA's approval for over a decade, effectively, to treat precocious puberty, and then got approved for doing so. The studies on this go back to the nearly 40 years ago. Listen, right here. Puberty blockers have not received FDA approval for use on children who are transgender. Keep in mind it took over a decade for precocious puberty. The practice of off-label prescription is common in children's medicine and does not indicate an improper, illegal, or experimental use of medication. It's not experimental. Off-label just means that it literally doesn't fit within a specific, strict designation from the FDA. That doesn't mean it's experimental. You can have stuff that's incredibly reliable and well-studied being used off-label. While few studies have examined the effect of puberty blockers for gender nonconforming or trans adolescents, the studies that have been conducted generally indicate these treatments are reasonably safe, are reversible, and can improve psychological well-being in these individuals. The longest follow-up study followed a trans man who began taking puberty blockers at age 13 in 1988, before later taking hormone treatments and later got gender confirmation surgery as an adult. His health was monitored for 22 years and at age 35 in 2010 was well-functioning in good physical health with normal metabolic, endocrine, and bone mineral density levels. There were no clinical signs of a negative impact on brain development from taking puberty blockers. Here, the longest study that we have on this shit is like somewhere out there there's a trans guy who's like the trans puberty blocker equivalent of like Adam 1 or like the fucking Smiling Man, like a goddamn Neanderthal frozen out of a block of ice, just a Giga Chad wandering about the world. Cole then moved on to the danger of inaction, the risk of people in the trans population attempting suicides over 40%. One of the things shown to lower it is the affirming care and affirming environment. That's totally true. In that 2021 anonymous survey, 52% of trans and non-binary respondents aged 13 to 14 said they'd seriously contemplated killing themselves. To be fair, it's important to keep in mind that if you ask any random person aged 13 to 24 these days if they'd seriously contemplated killing themselves, you'd get a decent turnback. You know, I mean, not the same, but you know. Such online surveys have become common in science, but researchers say they may not be fully representative of the larger population being studied. The authors of the 2015 U.S. Trans Survey said it's not appropriate to generalize the finding in the study to all trans people. That's true. Experts in gender care say more specific research is needed to determine whether medically transitioning as a minor reduces suicidal thoughts and suicides compared to those who socially transition or wait before starting treatment. Show me that, then. Experts in gender care. Show me. Who? Some gender-affirming professionals complain that suicide risk is too often used as to pressure and even frighten parents into consenting to a treatment. Hold on. That isn't the gender care professional pressuring or frightening the parent. That's just the thing that can happen. This is like saying your auto mechanic is like peer pressuring you into letting your children transition or sorry, peer pressuring you into like getting your oil changed because they're telling you what'll happen if you don't change your oil, you know? Like it's like, and then the mechanic employed these shitty manipulative tactics of telling me that not changing your oil for 7 years in a row can lead your car to break down, and I didn't appreciate it very much. Yeah, telling your children to get a transmission. De Vries, the Dutch researcher, told Reuters there's no evidence that providing care immediately leads to a decline in self-harm or would prevent suicide. What do you mean by immediately? In the long run, all of the evidence indicates that it prevents suicide and leads to a decrease in suicidality. What do you mean immediately? There's no evidence that within the first 3 seconds of the first hormone blocker treatment. What does this mean? All of these statements are like weird he said, she said, unquantifiable bullshit. And all the actual research we have is incredibly transpositive. It's very frustrating. A few weeks after visiting Akron, Danielle announced Reyes' social transition in a Facebook message to family and friends. I just wanted to let you know that Reyes started junior high as a female. She wrote in a 2020 post, she can finally be who she feels she is, a girl. I wish this wasn't our life sometimes. Wow, thank you. You're so supportive. A public Facebook post. I wish this wasn't our life sometimes, but it is and it's real, and I have to let it be and be there to pick up the pieces when the world turns ugly. And it will, so we need all the love and support we can get. Thank you so much for your incredible your incredible parenting. Yeah, sounds like an Autism Speaks mom. Many relatives and friends were supportive, including Alden to Danielle's mother. Others stopped talking to the boyers. Some parents complained to Reyes' school about her using the girls' bathroom. Previously, she'd used a single-person bathroom. The principal backed Reyes in a rural town? Dope. Reyes was eager to begin treatment. What are we waiting for? She asked her mother. In November 2020, Danielle took Reyes to an appointment with Akron Clinic's pediatric endocrinologist. Blah, blah, blah. So she's like 14 or 15 here? Jesus Christ. No wonder all of the like trans cell TTTT brained fuckers are like, it's over unless you get hormone blockers and HRT when you're like 3 years old or something. They see thing though? I mean, they're delusional, but you know. Incel's gonna incel. God, I wish I was a young shit. Yeah. And then imagining being me. Transition to male. Ugh, in the womb. Yeah. Never had to worry about that. Got bottom surgery chemically as a zygote. Male to male, yeah. Oh, see the fear-mongering? The only FDA-approved use for these drugs in children is for central precocious puberty. See? It's like, well, the FDA only approves this thing. It's like implying that this is experimental just because it's off-label. In September, the FDA published a study that found no evidence for an increased risk of fracture for precocious puberty patients who take Leuprolide, the generic name for Abevie's, Lupron, and similar drugs. However, the FDA study didn't review cases of children who took the drug for gender dysphoria. What? What difference does it make? What? Yeah, we have this study that taking puberty blockers for that keep the precocious puberty from happening, it doesn't have a problem. But what if the people who took them were trans, huh? Huh? What about precocious puberty would like annul the potential effect of increased fractures from taking these hormone blockers? This is just such a ridiculous. The way this is framed is so fucking dishonest. There are questions that you can ask because in medical science there are always questions that you can ask. But this is the way this is being framed is so fucking dishonest. Micro 102, after I'm done with this, the stream ends. So if you want me to end, I'll end. We haven't studied that these work on people whose favorite color is green. Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. Is your kid a big fan of 100 gex? We don't actually have any clinical research on this, and the FDA does not recommend on-label use of precocious puberty hormone blockers for fans of 100 gex. We don't know what had happened. It's experimental. In Texas earlier this year, bone scans indicated that a child, 15 years old at the time, had osteoporosis after 15 months on puberty blockers. The teen's mom, who asked not to be identified because she works at the hospital where her child was treated, said she thought she'd done everything right when her teen came out as a transgender girl. But after the bone scan results reviewed by Reuters, she said she regretted putting her child in hormone blockers. She stopped the Lupron injections and wouldn't agree to hormone therapy. Wait. Hold on. Hormone therapy doesn't do anything to your bone. Wait. First of all, do we know for a fact that it was caused by the puberty blockers? Were there bone scans done beforehand? Do we know for a fact this is a causative factor? Why are we only talking to the mom and not to the kid? Second of all, hormone therapy isn't going to worsen any osteoporosis issues as far as I know. Why would you stop the hormone therapy just because you've stopped the fucking puberty blockers? What? The child who was socially transitioned was at first furious with her and threatened to drop out of high school, she said. Their relationship is better now, she said, though we don't talk about gender. Well, this parent's going in a fucking retirement home, that's for sure. Isn't bone density one of the things that actually does affect? Puberty blockers can, yeah, but do we know this is causative? The only thing this paragraph says is that a young person... Oh, osteoporosis can be affected by estrogen. Do we know that this was caused by the puberty blockers? Also, you even if a estrogen can affect the osteoporosis thing, I'd still recommend letting the trans person transition. You know? Wait, estrogen reverses the osteoporosis? What? Some people use estrogen replacement therapy to prevent or reverse osteoporosis. ERT involves taking artificial estrogen to increase estrogen levels in the body? Wait, what? Wait, they're killing her. Wait, are they being serious? Could getting on estrogen literally like fix the osteoporosis? And the mom is just like, nope, no, we're not. We're stopping the hormone blockers. No estrogen. Now you just get now you have osteoporosis and you don't get the transition. Fuck you. What the fuck? The osteoporosis is a result of lacking a primary sex hormone. Give her the girl juice. You're killing her. Well, good luck. There's a lot of missing info here. Yeah, no shit. There's a ton of missing info because this is a hack job fucking op-ed fearmonger piece that has room for a million shitty, like uncertain anecdotes and no room for the plethora of studies we have that reaffirm my position on this. Such a long article, so little room for the studies on the effects of gender transition. Another concern about puberty blockers emerged in 2016 when the FDA ordered drug makers to add a warning about psychiatric problems. The drug's label is for children with puberty. As label, psychiatric events have been reported in such patients. Events include emotional symptoms such as crying, irritability, impatience, anger, and aggression. Whoa. The drugs that affect your hormones can lead to crying, irritability, impatience, anger, and aggression? That's fucking bananas. That's nanners. That's crazy. Who would have thought that when you give a 13-year-old something that influences the hormones they receive during puberty, yeah, Soakton left, there's always room to talk, but the problem is, like, framing is so important, right? If this article's contents were rewritten to be a bit less sensationalist and were placed alongside a bunch of, like, honest, straightforward evidence on the effect of gender transition being positive, then I wouldn't think it's a dishonest article. But this is so clearly only framing one side of the story, and it's framing it dishonestly at that. FDA pursued the label change after receiving 10 reports through its adverse event reporting system of children who had suicidal thoughts, including one suicide attempt. That's seriously all it took? One kid, one 14-year-old had one suicide attempt while taking hormone replacement, and then they had to add a fucking warning label? Did nobody ever have emotional symptoms or suicide attempts when taking puberty blockers for precocious puberty? Or did they just not care because they weren't fear-mongering over precocious puberty the way they are with trans youth? They added a label over one event? Okay. Said 10 reports for suicidal thoughts in people experiencing puberty, if you can believe it, and one suicide attempt. And apparently that on its own is enough without any study? Yeah, this is the same self-reported VAERS database, but I do not think they would have done this if it was, like, not a highly politicized issue. If I was trans and had to deal with this shit, I would just kill myself. The anti-trans stuff's too much. Yeah, it's great when I have friends or, like, hookups from Tinder, and I'm, like, hanging out with them, and they're like, you know, like, it's like, oh yeah, this anti-trans stuff's like horrible. Oh yeah, it's so difficult. You know, oh, it's such a pain in the ass, medical care stuff. And I'm being sympathetic, but in my mind, I'm just thinking like, sure is good being cis. Just lean it. Easy clap. But listen, we fight, okay? So that one day we may live in a country where trans people can do that, except when they're being trans. They can be like, sure is easy being trans. Easy clap. You'll have like trans chicks. They'll be like 16. Everything will be going great for them. And they'll be like, glad I'm not you, ghost inhabiting the body of a robot that's discriminated against by the government. Turns to turns to her right, and there's the ghost inhabiting the body of a robot that discriminates against the government. And it's like, yeah, glad I don't have your problems, you know? And then we repeat the process. They're literally going to die before we can get to that point. Yeah, no shit, they're ghosts. They have to die to get in the robot. Reuters found 72 adverse event reports submitted to the FDA from 2013 to 2021 of children on puberty blockers who showed suicidal, self-injurious, or depressive behavior. Okay, I know I'm not a doctor, but 72 reports of depressive behavior from adolescents over the course of 8 years. This might be something you want to do like a proper study on and not just add a warning label based on that. Because more than 72 adolescents over 2013 to 2021 have felt depressive symptoms by several orders of magnitude. A December 17th, 2020 adverse event report to the FDA describes a 15-year-old patient taking Lupron for gender therapy. The patient had a history of major depressive disorder and a family history of depression. The patient experienced mental health deterioration while on Lupron and attempted suicide twice. AbbVie wrote in the report to the FDA there is no reasonable possibility the adverse events were related to Lupron. The company did not elaborate. What? Okay. What am I meant to take from this? So the person was already depressive, had a family history of depression, and then continued to behave depressively after the hormone blockers. And then the company was like, yeah, that wasn't us. I would probably say the same thing from the company's perspective, to be honest with you. If I was like a sandwich shop vendor and I gave somebody a hoagie and then they killed themselves right in front of me, and it turns out they'd had a history of suicidal ideation, I would not reply kindly to people who asked me if my hoagie was the last straw. Sir, is it possible your sandwich was so bad? Like he was he was like that guy from the first episode of Smiling Friends. Like he had one thread clinging to life, and it was just the sandwich sucked, and he was like, no. I'm being a little facetious with this. I don't want people to I do want people to understand that I'm fully open to critiques of existing medical practice and further investigation on the efficacy of different systems for finding out what the best standard of care is for trans youth. This is just not the article for it. This article is dishonest. This article is bullshit. Okay, I want to be clear. If there are good studies that are done, which are like, you probably shouldn't just let them have the hormones right away. Let's give them a wait a bit. If those studies came out and they had actual research and not like tear jerking articles where they interview the transphobic mom of a 15-year-old trans guy or something, then I will try to reform my opinions on those. Yes, antidepressants do have those self-harm warning thoughts as well. Arch enemy, I literally just said the opposite of that. Vaush, here's a study on the puberty blocker osteoporosis thing. TLDR, its subclinical Z-score is reached after 2 to 3 years and quickly reversed by either stopping the blockers or introducing. Okay, so then it seems like the bone density problems with hormone blockers can go away if you replace them with a fucking hormone, which makes sense because that's what you're supposed to do. So that mom earlier referenced is literally killing their kid, having them on hormone blockers for 18 months and then cutting off hormone blockers and not giving them HRT. Like that's bad. Like they're doing the worst case scenario here. And this article just cited that like that was a reasonable like parental concern, No medical research necessary, just it turns out that my kid has osteoporosis. Let's stop this life-saving care and let's not maybe looking to see if this could actually help. Like, listen to this. Listen to this caption. Whoa, Jesus. I didn't mean to click on it. Oh, what? Oh, okay. Listen to this caption down here. Big changes. Since earlier this year, Reyes has been taking estrogen tablets to help her develop the secondary sexual characteristics aligned with her gender identity. They could also reduce her fertility later in life. No shit! Really? Estrogen can reduce her fertility? What an unknown variable that she must be unaware of, I'm sure. No shit. I don't think that fucking trans women get into the whole hormone game thinking like they're looking at the pills and they're thinking, I'm glad this won't affect my ability to bust fat ropes and impregnate bitches. You know, I think they know. I don't know why we're obsessing over the sperm count of a fucking adolescent. It's very weird. I mean that. It is very weird. Society will survive like a person's sperm count being lower, you know? We don't do this shit when it's like young guys are eating a bunch of oily food that's going to drop their sperm count or something. It's not like, here, let's have a giant article on how like stop eating french fries, your fucking T count is dropping or whatever. Yeah, Matt Walsh behavior. Yeah, they shouldn't have waited that long, Cotton D-pad. I don't think you should be on hormone blockers for like fucking 50 years or something. You're gonna go for it. AbbVie declined to comment for this article. Why would they? Some scientists and doctors also say they wonder about possible neurological effects of puberty blockers. The question, hormones released during puberty play a major role in brain development, so when puberty is suppressed, can that result in reduced cognitive functions such as problem solving and decision making? Well, it sure would be convenient if we had a multitude of studies on that exact subject that we'd be able to answer. Many questions this article has. Is it possible that these lead to cognitive problems? If only there were people who could have researched this and come up with the answer. Dr. John Strang, research developed for the gender development, blah, 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 wrote in 2020 paper. Pubertal suppression may prevent key aspects of development during a sensitive period of brain organization. Well, where are the studies? Strang said at the time that we need high-quality research to understand the impacts of this treatment, impacts which may be positive in some ways and potentially negative in others. He declined to comment whether he was pursuing such research or funding for it. We already have it! Race got the injection, family's insurance covering nearly all the cost, and the months past, Race complained of pain in her knee. She started taking vitamin D as a precaution. Her pain dissipated. Questions about fertility. Earlier this year, the Acorn Clinic told the Boyers it was time for Race to take the next step in her treatment, hormone therapy. As with much of trans medicine, research on the impact of hormones on fertility consists of small observational studies or surveys of adults that have significant limitations. No, listen. Stop. If you're if you're taking estrogen, it will affect your fertility. I thought this was like ubiquitously known. I don't think they care. I've never. Every time this gets talked about, it's like, oh yeah, you take E and then yeah, everyone knows this. It's not. They don't care. Can you imagine like talking to a pre-everything trans woman and you're like, okay, we can give you these hormones and they'll make you like look like a girl. Like your hips will widen somehow. This happens to some people. I don't fucking know. Your skin will get softer. You know, you'll be all girl looking. You'll be girly. You have fat titties. Oh, one problem: you won't be able to bust fat ropes and impregnate bitches with your dick. Is that a problem in your quest of being a girl? Like, hey, here's some stuff that makes you girl body. Do you want the thing that is considered like one of the archetypically masculine features of a body? Oh, you're fine with losing that? Okay. Oh, purple orange, yeah, you can I didn't even know that. A lot of recent studies have shown regular fertility drugs are highly effective in getting trans people fertile again within 3 to 6 months. Oh, I didn't actually know that. I'll look into that. That I don't know. I have no knowledge on that subject. Yeah, I get it in him Sida. It's you know, it's a trade-off. Many doctors acknowledge the long-term hormone therapy may reduce fertility. They say children who receive puberty blockers followed by hormones run the highest risk. But with no definitive science to rely on, doctors often leave the question open when talking to children and their parents. This is totally normal medical stuff. Hey, there's a chance this treatment will lead to X downside down the line. Is this an acceptable risk? That's not abnormal. This is a normal thing. One Tuesday earlier this year, 16-year-old Ethan S. and his mother were in an exam room in suburban Portland talking about testosterone therapy with Dr. Kara Connelly, director of Oregon Health and Science University's Doernbecher Gender Clinic. After reviewing the family's medical history, Connelly and assessor asked Ethan what he wanted from testosterone. My deepening of the voice definitely, and the like distribution of my fat and stuff, and hopefully facial hair. Well, testosterone can do all of those things, my man. So that's good. Ethan could expect those and other masculinizing changes, Connolly said. A deeper voice and hair growth would be permanent. I think they can be reversed, but it's a process. Let's just say permanent, like, yeah, it's permanent. Yeah, it's pretty permanent. It gets you. Kennelly then turned to fertility. Nearly all patients who stop taking testosterone start to have menstrual cycles again, she told them, and they can go on to carry pregnancy or have their eggs used by someone else. Yeah. Um, the Yeah, a lot of trans guys end up having hysterectomies because obviously, without continued um, testosterone, their body's going to boot the baby engine back up again. We can't predict with 100% certainty testosterone would not have any effect in your fertility potential. Yeah. All we know is generally what happens in a population, and that it does seem from evidence that it's not as harmful to fertility potential as we once thought. Okay. Kennelly based her comments on a 2014 study published in the journal Obstetrics and Gynecology that analyzed survey responses from 41 trans men who had had a baby. 25 of them reported using testosterone before becoming pregnant. Okay, so those are the only ones we care about, right? If we're talking about medical outcomes, why would we count trans men who didn't take testosterone before having a baby? That's obviously what we're looking if we're measuring fertility from testosterone, right? Yeah, a Bolshevik Y2K. They're framing this the way that like an autism speaks parent or like a Mumsnet mom might, right? Where it's like, oh no, my poor dear is going to lose their fertility potential. Why don't we ask the fucking kids? I don't think they care. I have never met a trans person who really like was who was unaware of and really like interested in remaining fertile after transitioning. However, the researchers acknowledged the survey excluded trans men who attempt to get pregnant and cannot, and those who don't carry to term. Oh, okay. Well, those seem important. Ethan was, listen to the kid. Ethan was unconcerned about possible side effects from taking testosterone. When's the soonest I can get it? The trans man sitting down in front of me seemed unconcerned with the prospect that he might not be able to bear children. Crazy. In Oregon, teens can take hormones without parental consent starting at age 15. Isn't that because their medical age of consent is 15? This would be the case for like any medicine thing they want to do, isn't it? Let me check. Can somebody look up medical age of consent in Oregon so that the fucking next time I type in a Google search that starts with M, people don't see age of consent flash up on the autofill, and they're like, yeah, it is 15. Okay, yeah. Then so again, this is fear mongering, dude. In Oregon, teens can take hormones without parental consent starting at 15. Teens can do whatever with the hospital. So why make it sound like this is some like what that's just their medical age of consent? Yeah, minor rights, access and consent to healthcare. Yeah, minors who are 15 years or older are able to consent to medical and dental services without parental consent. This includes everything: immunization, emergency room visits, x-rays, physicals, injury. Look at that. So it's not a trans thing. Like they're like, oh, they can get the trans hormone. They can do anything. Okay. Ethan's mother, Melissa, was supportive. She said Ethan had already socially transitioned when he started talking about medically transitioning 2 years ago. Then Melissa's father, suffering from alcoholism and depression, committed suicide. Ethan had been close with his grandfather, and with that, the family history. Melissa said she worried even more about her son. There's the fear of what happens if I let him transition, and then the fear of what happens if I don't. unless it's said after the appointment. Can we just like let trans kids like do they just like live their lives without having to be like a suicide like risk factor assessment? Like we're balancing all the like just follow the medical science here. Jesus. Also, yeah, the parent doesn't have to let anything. This is in Oregon, isn't it? Suburban Portland, 16-year-old Ethan. The mom doesn't have to let shit here. Well, I guess the mom provides the money. Finance, then. Few children choose to have their eggs or sperm preserved before gender treatment. It's just so fucking weird to care about this. I'm in particular, harvesting eggs can be expensive and invasive, and for both genders, it can increase the discomfort they experience with their bodies. Yeah, it can be expensive. Also, like, hello, underage trans boy or girl, can we fucking dig into you to get eggs or sperm? Like, yeah, no, it's fine. A lot of people don't even want kids these days. It's the world's ending, you know? I hate that these autoplay. So I have to, like, I don't, it distracts me to have it down there. Dr. Angela, pediatrician, sometimes ask parents to write a letter to their future adult child about the decision to start medications that may affect their fertility. What? Hey, parent of trans kid, write a letter to your adult transition child about your fertility. At home, Danielle asked Reyes if she was comfortable with the possibility of being unable to have her own biological children. Reyes said she would adopt. A perfectly sensible response. We have children who need adoption. Also, a friend had already offered to have a baby for her after they became adults. Aw. She's like 14. That's a really sweet. That's a good friend. That's sweet. It could be sad, but I'm okay with it, Reyes told her mother. By April this year, Reyes was taking estrogen pills along with regular shots of Lupron. The endocrinologist started her on low-dose estrogen, gradually increasing the amount while weaning Reyes from the puberty blocker. This is like a best-case scenario. Reyes also regularly sees a counselor. The Okran Clinic, like many that Reuters spoke to, requires that most teens taking hormones receive counseling. This is like best case. This whole article is fear-mongering, and the headline lady that they're talking about is like a best case scenario, knew that she was trans from the moment she popped out of the womb, socially transitioned at 4, fucking gender clinic, counseling, mentally well, very determined position. Like, this is like a best case scenario. How am I supposed to fearmonger over this? Like, this is good. What is this? Calming influence. Ethan makes use of one of the squeeze toys the Dornbecker Gender Clinic provides the patient to help ease their anxiety during consultations. Hey, cameraman, zoom in on the kid's hands so you can see how anxious he is to be here. Get that shot of the little star that the pediatric clinic hands out. Yeah, look at how getting torn apart over this. Fucking, I've never seen this focused on. Maybe he's just autistic. Yeah, this just reminds me so much of the Autism Speaks bullshit. Don't reference any of the research. Only talk to parents who are all clearly fucking weird about their kids. And then the kids are like the most normal one in the stories. You'll have autistic kids who are just standing there being like, "Yeah, I like trains." And the parents are like, "Why can't you be normal?" And the kid's like, "Yeah, my mom gets like that sometimes when I tell her that I like trains. I still like them though." You know? Rice lives much of her life as any teenager, but as her transition has progressed, she has continued to confront disapproval from other relatives of the community. At the county fair last year, members of the crowd grumbled when Reyes was crowned horse princess. God give chat the strength to not make any jokes. In town, she spots people rolling their eyes and hears their snide comments. During a field trip in May, she broke down in sobs when she saw students teasing a 16-year-old boy from another school who had flirted with her and had asked to message her online. Okay, them high school kids are gay. Listen, I don't want to be weird or nothing, but like 16-year-old boy talking to the horse princess, you know? Oh yeah, we'll chat later. And then other people giving that guy shit, they're gay. That's what they are. Children are cruel. Yeah, and gay. It's what they are. Bit fruity. I know. This is some rural town. They're like, what are you doing talking to that lady over there? She's supposed to be with a cowboy, big bucking Bronco, yeehaw. What stereotype am I going for right now? This is classist. I'm moving on. This is something. What am I doing? Get me out of here. I've been reading this article for what feels like my entire day, and I hate it. Yeah, that's like the reverse bullying right there. The gay bullies at the school giving the guy shit for flirting with the trans girl, and the bullies don't even know. So they're like, "You having fun with your girl over there? Bet she doesn't even have a dick." This is the future if the left isn't stopped. Uh, okay. Uh, Some patients who receive treatments like braces eventually decide to undergo bottom surgery. For trans girls, it means you do the flipperoo, the zoop-de-doo. Sometimes the testicles are removed too. Yeah, when they give you the vagina, they don't leave the balls. It's not like a pussy with like a ball sack like hanging. Yeah. The surgery is irreversible. Yeah, yes. Expensive. Yes. And can result in serious complications that require follow-up procedure. Yes, it is a big deal. It is a big surgery. Yeah, usually the balls get removed first. I know several trans women who've gotten their balls removed but still have dicks. It's like a hormone emission thing. Like they get a lower like default testosterone level. How do they pee? I don't know. I think it just kind of diffuses through their penis skin like osmosis. Like the pee just kind of sweats out of the empty scrotum. I'm not sure. Um ugh, God, that ugh, all right. Um yeah, surgeries can have big complications sometimes. Though again, keep in mind we did look at the regret rate for bottom surgery and it was like fucking 2%, and then the regret rate for knee surgery was like 20%, you know? Now, I soaked and left. We saw it the other day. We saw it. We went over it with the detransitioner grift. Offers of WP. Okay, maybe this will make me sound conservative or whatever. I think I'm against bottom surgery unless you're like 18 or something, like an adult. It's just such a big surgery. It's so involved. Apparently, the recovery and the follow-up care is incredibly involved too. And it's like that's a big, just like pump the brakes for a sec, you know? It's not like there's a rush for that either, because if you're taking the hormones already, like the changes to your body are going to be dictated by the hormones you're getting. It's just the only reason No, it's you know, I'm fine with that getting left off a bit, you know. Would there be edge cases where exceptions would be made? Well, if it was considered medically necessary or medically preferable, or whatever the doctors go for it, yeah, it's fine. Um, because they're saying right here, WPATH recommends at least age 17. Endocrine Society puts it at least 18. So, yeah. In its recent policy statement, the Biden admin said gender-affirming surgeries were typically used in adulthood or case by case in adolescence. Genital surgeries performed in minors are rare, but surgeons say interest is growing. Oh, that's fucking disgusting, SDL. Here we have what STL felt necessary for us to take a look at, which is the specific things that can go wrong following bottom surgery. 1% of patients had a fistula, which I only know as an item in Binding of Isaac. 14% had stenosis or strictures. That makes sense. 2% had tissue necrosis. 4% had prolapse. Nice. And somehow, despite all this, the regret rate is like 1 to 2%. Oh, it's a boss. Sorry, not an item. I just remembered. A fistula is a hole between two cavities. I thought it was like a clump of hair. No, that's a bezoar. A bezoar? That gets like a lump in your stomach or something? That's not good either. Bulbasaur, that's it. Anyway, so listen, okay, I just want to say this, okay? I'm generally really gung ho about hormone replacement therapy, hormone blockers, and hormones because the evidence supports that enthusiasm. The evidence also supports the idea that most people really, really, really are on board with the bottom surgeries that they get. Um, However, surgery is just a real big deal. That's all I'm saying. It's a real big deal, you know? It's a whole thing. Also see the data on satisfaction. My God, STO. 92. Okay, hold on. 92% of vaginoplasty patients reported overall satisfaction. That's pretty good for such an invasive surgery. Uh, 86% satisfaction with function, 90% with aesthetic outcomes, 76% reported ability to have an orgasm, 89% with uh, intestinal vaginoplasty? What is intestinal vaginoplasty? Vaginoplasty. Ability to orgasm after vaginoplasty with either penile inversion technique or bowel pedicle flap. Yeah, surgery stuff is disgusting. Yeah. Well, you know what? What matters is that people are happy. Yeah. This is for trans women. Yeah, well, the science on building a vagina is more studied than the science on building a penis. I imagine there are a number of sociological reasons for this, but there's also some pretty strong, like, biological ones, which is that, like, not to sound crude, but when you're making a vagina, you're making, like, a wet hole with nerve endings in it. And God bless them for it, right? We love our wet holes with nerve endings. Penises are external and more mechanically complicated because they have to get hard and then not get hard anymore. So it's more of a, you know, you really have to look at the camera for that. Yes, I did actually. We're getting there. As I understand it, the medical science on bottom surgery for both penises and vaginas is improving at a rapid pace. I see every year I see some new, like, well, this new method has been developed that does this or that, the other. I know a post-op trans woman whose vagina looks pretty much identical to a cis pussy. Yeah, I've known two trans women who have had bottom surgery, and both of them were quite satisfied. And though I only saw one of them naked, I think she had every reason to be satisfied, frankly. Um, I mean, Clara Keffels has had bottom surgery and has reported nothing but satisfaction with that. So that's. Is this finally a way to enlarge my penis? No, I'm afraid not. It doesn't quite work that way. As a trans woman, a lot of the surgery stuff, while I'm immensely grateful for it, it's very hard to look at because it's blood and gore in a very sensitive area. Yeah, I totally get that. Just keep in mind, like, if I Google knee surgery photos, uh, no matter, no matter what surgery you're looking at, total knee replacement. Wow. Ooh. Oh my God. Jesus Christ. They have the entire leg like folded forward. Like they're like pulling the calf and leg together so the knee snaps open like you're snapping open like a pocky stick or something. And you can just see it's just like a meat tube with the bones going through, and they're grafting metal plates. Link? Okay, I'm gonna link a couple images in chat. I'm just gonna link a couple images in chat, okay? Don't look if you don't wanna. Hey, Keffels. We're just talking about bottom surgery. I'm gonna link one more image in chat again. Don't look if you don't wanna. This one's probably worse. Mm. Yeah. I'm just saying, a lot of conservatives will try to like attack or like try to make trans women like look disgusting by obsessing over photos of like bottom surgeries gone wrong, or like look at the stuff that they do to your body, the mutilation, blah blah blah. Fucker, it's a surgery. What the fuck do you think surgeries are? You're not. It's a fucking surgery. Yeah, like any shit. Look at this disgusting mutilation of the body. Look at what an appendicitis looks like. Don't look what appendicitis looks like. Don't do it. Don't look up an appendectomy. Don't do it. Surgeries are disgusting. Yeah. You should see the weird fan art they made of me. This is Cuffles talking. Reminds me of how Nazis portray Jews. Oh, I see. I see what you post and retweet. I see, and it is. It is. The art they make of you and of trans women broadly is identical to like the happy merchant stuff they've done with Jewish people, where it's like they betray their own mental illness by like making their opponents look as subhuman as possible, like not even humans. Which really kind of like underlines how weak their arguments are. You know that Wojak that you're always seeing with the Nazi types these days, where it's like it'll be like the Wojak with like the pointed chin and the round face, and they'll have a trans shirt and like purple hair or something, and it'll be like them swinging from a noose or like being shot or their dick cut off or whatever. And every time I see that particular anything in that genre, because it's like a specific Wojak they use, the only thing I can think of, and this is sincerely my reaction, I feel this deep, like, emotional weight of, like, wow, the person who made this is deeply mentally ill. This person spent, like, multiple minutes of their time, like, drawing the blood splatters of a cut off dick of a trans woman Wojak multiple times, because there's always multiple drawings, and then spam posted it thinking, like, oh, we'll totally own the trans people doing this. Motherfucker, you are owning the trans people. You're inflicting deep emotional pain in them because now they feel bad for your mental illness. Engaging in you're projecting sympathy towards yourself because you're not well. You're unwell. Literally, actually mentally ill. Should be in an institution. Anyway, let's finish this stupid fucking Reuters article. Ugh. The Komodo analysis of insurance claims found 56 genital surgeries, including vaginoplasty and other procedures, among patients aged 13 to 17 with a prior gender dysphoria diagnosis. 13's probably definitely way too young for any bottom surgery. You need to be an adult for it to work anyway, because if you're too young, there's not even like enough material for them to work with, I think. But they might. It says right here, including vaginoplasty and other procedures, which makes me think the other things that happened weren't vaginoplasty. This doesn't include surgeries not covered by insurance. 2017. The doctor said there's a definite increase in the number of minors requesting information on vaginoplasty or being referred to surgery by their mental health providers. I may be clear the egg. I'm no expert. Complications from genital surgeries are common. A California study found that a quarter of 869 vaginoplasty patients with a mean age of 39. A mean age of 39? Wow. Had a surgical complication so severe they had to be hospitalized again. Among those patients, 44 needed additional surgeries to address the complication, which included bleeding and bowel injuries. I would wonder when the California study is from. Follow-up care after a surgery is not exactly uncommon. I think that it's gotten a lot better in the recent years. By recent years, I mean the past 2 or 3 years. But no, that's to be expected. Again, if you're being forthcoming about all this stuff. For adolescents transition to female, puberty blockers and hormones can complicate eventual genital surgery. That's because medications can stunt development of male genitalia from which vagina and vulva are constructed. Somebody in chat said that there's a way to get around this. I'll have to do research on my own. In 2020, De Vries and other Dutch researchers urged clinicians to inform trans youth and their parents about this risk when starting puberty blockers. I'm fully informed of the... I'm fully in support of the patients being informed. Bowers, the new WPATH president and a trans woman, has said she has worried some patients who begin puberty blockers at a young age won't ever be able to have an orgasm because they never experienced one prior to pausing puberty. What? Wait, is that... I've never heard of that before. Wait, if you got on hormone blockers at like really young age, and then you got estrogen afterwards, and you would still have... Okay. I don't know. She said ongoing research has allayed many of her concerns. Oh. And it seems not only probable but likely there's retention of orgasmic function. Wait, what? So wait, this wasn't her saying she currently worries about it. She was saying she was worried, and then she did the research and no longer is? Okay. She said she encouraged doctors to talk about this risk when adolescents before they start medication. Well, yes, you should talk about every risk, every even remotely perceptible risk. Every bit of information in this article is formatted to maximize fear-mongering, man. Jesus. The Akron Clinic hasn't discussed genital surgery with the Boyers yet. Akron Children's Hospital doesn't provide gender-affirming surgeries. Wait, then why would they what? The Akron Clinic has... Okay, right. Overall, Reyes appears unfazed by long-term implications of treatment. I just go along with it pretty much. In hindsight, she forgives her mother for making her conceal her identity for so long. Sometimes she really wasn't protecting me. She was just hurting me, and I know she didn't mean it, Reyes said. I know a lot of parents probably do that, and they think they're trying their best. Well, I'm wishing all the luck in the world to all the trans teens here, and zero luck in the world to everyone else. No luck whatsoever.
I'm Reyes Boyer. I am 14 years old. I always like dressing up.
Reyes Boyer was assigned male at birth, but by the time she was 4, it was clear to her parents that she identified as a
Imagine getting clocked by Reuters.
Girl. The Boyers live in a tightly knit rural area in Ohio, and Reyes' parents feared she wouldn't be accepted as a transgender girl in their conservative community. So, they struck an uneasy compromise. Reyes could be a girl, but only at home.
But I was never allowed to wear girly things in public, like my little Cinderella dresses. And I knew whenever I got home I could do it. but I wanted to wear them out in public so bad, but mom and dad wouldn't let me, trying to
This is obviously a girl's room. Biology is written across the walls here.
protect me, but it wasn't really protecting me. It was hurting more and more.
In middle school, Reyes grew increasingly anxious about what puberty would bring.
Just to know that if I could get facial hair and my voice could get deeper and I could grow an Adam's apple, and I just didn't want that. Because if you want to feel like a girl, you don't want that. It's not a girly thing, that's a manly thing.
That's when Reyes' mother Danielle decided to seek help at Akron Children's Hospital and its new gender clinic.
I finally found Akron Children's, and I knew that she really needed to be who she was and to change. And when we went there,
Oh my fucking god. Shia LaBeouf. That's his name. That's crazy.
they really helped us feel that we were normal.
7 months after her initial consultation, Reyes had her first puberty blocker injection at the age of 13. For her parents, it was a huge relief.
Best thing about choosing to go down this path is that it felt like a little bit of weight was taken off your shoulders, that now you can let your child be who they want to be.
DeFeels streamer pauses for 30 seconds to say nothing of value. Oh god.
And then stop. Those changes.
In recent years, the United States has seen an explosion in the number of children diagnosed with gender dysphoria.
Keep in mind, by explosion, we mean 0% of the population, all the way up to like 1/1000th of the population, if that. Not even that. The fraction of a 1/1000th of a...
Defined as a feeling of distress from identifying as a gender different from the one assigned at birth. An analysis by Commodore Health for Reuters found that more than 120,000 children ages 6 to 17 were diagnosed with gender dysphoria between 2017 and 2021.
See, that's not a lot compared... what's the, estimation on how many trans... hold on. How many people are trans estimate? New study estimates 1.6 million in U.S. identify as transgender. So that's 0.5%, right there, more or less. Whereas 120... How many children are there in the U.S.? $73 million children, which would mean that this would be like 1 in 700, as opposed to being so it'd be 1 in 700 represented by this gender dysphoria diagnosis thing, relative to the 0.5%, which would be whatever. I'm tired.
Akron's clinic is one of more than 100 clinics offering gender-affirming care for children.
Isn't this a good thing, though? Yeah, I'm glad that people can understand their identities and shit, okay? That's great. It's cool. It's fine.
15 years ago, there were none. Gender-affirming care covers a spectrum of interventions. It can entail adopting a child's preferred name and pronouns. It can incorporate therapy and other forms of psychological treatment. And from around the start of adolescence, it can include medical interventions such as puberty blockers, hormones, and in some cases, surgery.
Schools, protect trans students.
It's an emerging field of medicine where strong evidence of the efficacy and possible long-term consequences remain scant. Puberty blockers and sex hormones don't have U.S. Food and Drug Administration approval for children's gender care, and the drug's long-term effects on fertility and sexual function remain unclear. Some states have sought to ban youth gender care, saying it's harmful or not medically necessary. And transgender children still face discrimination, bullying, and threats of violence. But the surging number of children seeking gender-affirming care reflects in part the success of years of advocacy for transgender rights, which doctors say has made more children and their families comfortable about seeking help. Dr. Kara Connolly is the medical director of the Dornbecker Gender Clinic at Oregon Health and Science University.
We affirm every young person's gender identity, and that doesn't mean that we're going to prescribe medications for everybody. But we want to support them in.
Sorry, I was trying to see if anybody had been stupid enough to make a chart of, like, the history of people who are gay in the U.S. And it's like, how many gay people were there in the U.S. in 1923? 0. There were 0 gay people, according to the chart. And now, whoa, now in like the 80s and from there was way more. Oh my God, where'd they come from? This is a totally new thing. It's a social contagion. This wasn't a thing before. Guys haven't been like fucking each other all throughout time in history. This is new.
And their gender identity at that moment in time. And we believe them when they say what their gender identity is.
What?
We have to focus on what we do know, and that there is research that shows the significant psychological benefit to these treatments. And so we're weighing that, what we do know about the benefits, and against the potential unknowns about some of the risks. And as we're gathering evidence, I think I don't think that the answer is to stop treatment altogether.
Wow, crazy how much better the video is than the article, when the video's primary source is a gender physician. Vaush, you are wrong about infertility in trans women not being an issue. Trans women who become infertile due to medication will not be able to conceive children, not just not being able to use their... What? Yeah, because their sperm count has got... What? No, that's what we were... What? That's what we were talking about, yeah. Because the spermies go away. Because when your body has testosterone in it, your balls hit the spermie switch and make a bunch of them. Probably.
For the Boyers, the decision to put Reyes on puberty blockers and hormones was not an easy one. They were told that the puberty blockers could weaken her bones, and the effects on her brain development and fertility were not well understood.
No, they seem understood.
But the risk of inaction was even more.
How can she be a girl if her last name is Boyers? That's why her mom and dad were so confused and distraught. They're like, how?
More alarming. A doctor warned that without treatment, Reyes would remain at increased risk of suicide. Experts say more research is needed on how medical...
I really hate that this is like the metric for well-being when it comes to trans stuff. Because, like, we're not thinking about well-being on its own. You know what I mean? Keffels, you agree with me on this, right? Like, okay, if a guy has like a really debilitating leg injury that makes it hard to walk and hurts a lot, like, you would probably lower his suicide rate if he got a surgery that fixed the pain and allowed him to walk, you know? But we don't talk about it as like, oh yeah, we should get this guy the new leg because it would reduce suicidality. We would just say, yeah, obviously we should get him the fucking leg, of course, because he wants it. It would make his life better. Like, the suicidality thing gets waved around as like a last resort, like, emergency switch. On like, oh, well, this is justified because this... But why do we even have to go that far? I don't need, like, evidence of lowered suicidality to justify any other potential non-life-threatening, like, surgery that I could have done to myself. As an adult, I can have anything done to me that I want. There's literally, like, body modding communities. Go to China, get your legs broken and reset so you gain 3 inches in height. Do whatever. But... And everyone's just like, oh, wacky, people can do what they want. But then it's like, oh, there's a million billion fucking articles showing that giving trans healthcare to trans people is good. Oh, well, actually, I don't know. I'm going to need you to give me an exact percentage risk decrease of suicide attempts before I'm willing to sign off on this obvious shit, you know? It's just so, it's so crass. It's so debased. Studies showing fertility coming back in all patients after 4 months. Really? Oh, that's nice. Okay. So I guess if trans women want to, like, you know, want to produce a kid with their own genes, they can do it even after a good amount of... Read what Keffel said. All right. Oh, 100% it'd be increasing quality of. You need to say pseudologity because people don't believe this. Yeah. It's literally like the people are only willing to sign off on this stuff, like trans healthcare, if it's that or death. It can never just be because of like self-actualization or it makes their lives better or they'd be happier or they want it. It's like, oh yeah, well, if it's framed against death, you know.
Transitioning as a minor affects
7 p.m.
suicide risk compared to other interventions.
People think that they should let their child do it on their own time when they're older. It's worse. It makes you feel worse and worse. And then at that point, you're like, well, why is my child depressed?
Rugby Pup says there aren't any long-term studies showing that gender-confirming surgery has positive effects on mental health of trans patients. Yes, there is. I think it's literally on my like big document that I haven't updated in ages. There are plenty of studies. We've overwhelmingly positive evidence on the effects of gender transition for trans people.
Or you let them go till they're 18 years old. Now there's nothing you can do for them.
Not all of Rias' social circle are supportive of her transition. Some stopped talking to the Boyers. Others complained about her using the girls' bathroom at school. But she and her family remain undaunted.
I just want people to know that
they're doing these like facial profile shots to so the young shits can continue to own the seething and coping TTTT cells.
Just love your children no matter what. And you should know as a mother and a father what they truly, truly want deep down inside. And don't deny that feeling of them. Because you're not them and you don't really know.
You mean the doc Rose Wrist made, lol? Ah, DGGer. No, I don't think Rose Wrist made that section. Rose Wrist made his own document on systemic racism, which I asked him for permission to use that in mine, and I paid him $1,000 for it unprompted. I cite him directly in the section. This is meant to be like an own against me.
So if I could help just one single family out there to be true to themselves and not hide, please do it. Because you'll live a lot better life if you can.
You don't have to agree with my life. You don't have to be like, yay, LGBTQ flat. Like, you don't have to shout it from the rooftops. Just please be respectful and call me by my pronouns and be respectful to me.
What a crazy and outrageous demand. I can't believe these transgenders are ruining my life with their insane demands, such as...
Shout it from the rooftops. Just please be respectful and call me by my pronouns and be respectful to me.
What? That's the fucking outrage. I'm furious. I'm seeing red. What the fuck? Please let me out of this. I've been reading this thing for ages. It's 7:30. It's been 6.5 hours. Ah, God. Can I just read these donos tomorrow, please? I'm doing it. I don't care. Fuck you. I don't care. I'm literally a streamer. I fucking stream tomorrow. Ugh, let me out. I'm hungry. I have a Chipotle burrito in my goddamn fridge, and it is good. It's got 3 minutes left in this earth. Who's streaming? Who's streaming? Who's streaming? Remember, you're here forever. I should get that put up right here. Except instead of the baby, you know, it's like horses or something. I don't know. Fuck, who's streaming?